criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, David Bruno. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for your patience as well. David, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on the closing arguments. As I said, I thought going into closings, the defense was doing very well. Might have even had a bit of a lead, so to speak. But I thought the prosecution closed the gap a bit during closings. Your thoughts?
Well, first, I thought the closings were very long, especially the rebuttal. I think Richard Clausey had an opportunity to give another closing argument instead of a rebuttal. And I'll tell you what, my thoughts on him is that style that he just presented, you either like it or you hate it. You know, and it goes both ways. And I'll tell you, here's how you start to hate it, is when he gets up and starts diminishing the actions of these four individuals when they show up at midnight at this person's home and what their intentions were when they came. They didn't come to just talk it out. They didn't come for just a basic fist fight. They came to hurt this individual. And you lose credibility when you start to make those arguments about these four individuals. I think on the facts alone, if you slow this thing down and you go frame by frame, when I was a prosecutor, one of my mentors talking about search and seizure law always talked about frame by frame, what happens every second and how do circumstances change. And if you look at that and give that analysis of this fact, there is a point in time when they're starting to drive off where they're no longer a threat. And just on those facts alone, I think the defendant could lose. This is a stand your ground law, but you do lose the right for deadly force at a certain point. But back to the prosecutor and his style, when you jump out and lose credibility with the jury, that gives them every reason to check the not guilty box. And I think he came very close to coming across as not credible when he goes and he talks about the four people coming over and why they did that.
That's an excellent point. And when his fellow prosecutor was delivering her closing, I felt the same way. I want to pull up a quick comment here as we check in with social media a little bit here. The comment comes from Deb. And Deb basically says, I'm at a loss listening to this prosecutor, meaning the first prosecutor, the female prosecutor. She surely cannot believe herself and what is coming out of her mouth. So some of the same issues there with Deb. And I felt the same way, trying to minimize what these four guys were doing going over to the house. Randy, your thoughts on this case and the closing arguments?
So you see why David's a great lawyer, right? If he'd been arguing it, I think he wins. I agree with him. Overkill is the word I was thinking about when he went on and on and on. And also using the word pissed off. I mean, I can't believe we're on TV saying those words, right? Especially if you're the representative of the people. You're the government, you're the citizens' representative, and why won't you say angry? Why do you have to go there and get down on the same level and start thinking maybe, you know, he's going to alienate them? He has the facts. He has all the facts he needs. 39 shots. How is self-defense shooting 39 shots? How is self-defense leaving your house? Self-defense, when you have four people that are walking away, you go inside, you lock your door, you call the police, right? So, I mean, he could have left it at that. Maybe the overkill, maybe he started to piss off the jury at him. That's the risk. You know, we'll see if his style worked or not. He definitely made some ground. He definitely was clever. His arguments were persuasive. The question is, does his style outweigh the substance?
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know, as far as style goes, our next comment I want to point out is from Roxanne. And Roxanne sort of mentioned something that David touched on. She says, I think defense is taking way too long and putzing. Jury might have checked out and not listening to everything he has to say at this point. And that kind of goes to your point earlier, David, that actually you were talking about the state, but I think the defense went on too long as well. But let me ask you this, and this goes to the 39 shots, something that Randy just mentioned. You know, the intent for murder here doesn't have to be right away. It can be from the 10th shot on. It doesn't have to go initially, so you're right. And I'm wondering if you think the defense missed an opportunity to bring in an expert to explain how easy it is with that type of weapon to fire off 39 shots.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, that is something scientific that this jury, this made up of lay people may not understand. That is a great point you make. I mean, the fact is, when you fire 39 shots into a vehicle, I mean, there aren't many different intents that I could think of. Scare them away, you know, get them out of that house, or kill. And I think, look, I mean, like I said before, you break that down frame by frame by frame, There's a point when they are fleeing and these bullets, these projectiles are being fired into that vehicle where I really question the defendant's actions at that point, and unfortunately really gives them the series of facts to find him guilty and dismantle the stand your ground law in Florida.
You know what this boils down to, Randy, I think, and you let me know what you think, is whether this jury believes that he saw guns or he didn't. Now, these four guys, at least according to testimony, and there was a gun found at the scene, introduced a gun into this situation. So does that make it more likely that this jury is going to believe his testimony that somehow he saw guns in that car? We know there weren't recovered any from the car, but we also know it took 5 months for the investigators to search and try to figure out if there were more guns involved in this incident, partly, as the state mentioned, because it really wasn't mentioned by the defendant. Your thoughts on that aspect?
I think it boils down to something even simpler than that, Michael. I think it might boil down to, what does the jury think about these four folks, the victims? If they think, what were they doing approaching this guy? They were obviously intimidating. They outnumbered him 4-1. They had a reason to be upset. They were coming to do harm. And, you know, somebody comes to my house, I treat them the same way. If they are angry at them, they may skip over the fact that it wasn't really self-defense. It was self-defense and some. And that's what I would sort of argue as a prosecution. They might have originally thought he's going to defend himself. He gets the gun, but it was not just, hey, self-defense, get away from me. Oh, now you're running? Now I'm going to come after you. It's self-defense. And then, like you said, in a moment, frame by frame, like David said, it could have been self-defense at the beginning. Certainly self-defense ended when he chased him down and shot 39 times.
David, so many of these cases come down to who the jury likes, and I think the defense did a great job of making these victims, as well as Dominique Jones, his girlfriend, who sort of set the whole thing in motion, in my mind, making them unlikable.
Totally agree. I mean, look at the text messages that were received as well. You throw that into the mix here as to what this defendant thought was the threat. And, oh, by the way, look, I was just watching the video again, too, and I'd ask your viewers to look at the individual with the white sweatshirt. And even when the defendant comes out of the house, he's at his waistband.
His hand is in his pocket or near his waistband, yep.
Yeah, he's in the waistband, and everyone knows where you keep those guns, in the waistband. I believe that he's probably trying to show this individual a threat like that, and that's how he may have perceived it as well. You could see it right here. The defendant is coming out when he's at the waist.
I agree. I thought the same thing when I saw it. All right, David Bruno, Randy Kessler, sorry our time was short, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. Folks, stick around. Coming up next,